Is anybody going to catch him? No, not my Ford.
Not in my Ford.
Not at 80 miles an hour, man. He says so. And I think probably...
I would believe that, though.
Oh, I would.
I would believe that story, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would too. I mean, it's... but the thing about Bonnie and Clyde, and you probably already know this if you've done any research on them at all. I mean, they were looked at by a lot of people as Robin Hoods.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, these people
just
were
like Jesse James.
They were going out. He was going out and robbing banks that had taken my farm, that had taken my money, and so on, so on. Right. And they were saying, "Go for it, man. Yeah. Go ahead and do that because the bank screwed us over. So you can screw them over." I mean, that's basically what a lot of them thought.
Oh yeah.
Now there was only one time, and people asked me, that Clyde ever gave back anything to anyone except his family. They were, I don't know, you probably know this too, they were big family people. I mean, Bonnie and her mother and sisters they were like this, and Clyde was really, really close to his family. And I think a lot of the money they stole quite a bit of money, but I think a lot of it went back to Texas, to their families, you know? Right. I think that actually happened. But, yeah. Well,
Prohibition, there was a mentality in Prohibition, and people felt they had been robbed by the banks.
At this bank in Lancaster, Clyde and I would imagine at that time it was Henry Methvin. There were different people that ran with Clyde. Henry Methvin was the one. His dad was the one that set Bonnie and Clyde up. Methvin was. But Ray Hamilton was another guy. I mean, there were 4 or 5 different people that ran with him from different times. But anyway, they went into this bank and they were line up, and Clyde and Henry Methvin, and I don't know if Hamilton was probably with him at that time, just walked up the line. They robbed everybody in line too. When they got to the counter, they took all the money in the bank, and Clyde was walking out of the bank, and he walked by this guy about the same height as him. He was covered with mud from head to toe. And Clyde stopped and looked at him and said, "Did I take your money?" And the guy says, "Yeah, you did take my money." And Clyde said, "Well, how much did I take from you?" He said, $25. And Clyde said, peeled off $25 and gave it back to him and said, "I don't steal from people like you." So, and I would imagine that probably that guy went out and said, Clyde Barrow's okay.
Yeah, he's okay.
He's all right because he gave me my money back, right. You know. And then that story just...
He's not really a bad man.
Yeah, he's not really bad. They only killed 13 people, so 9 lawmen. But yeah.
Yeah, this is good stuff.
But
this is really good stuff. What are these? What is this down here? These artifacts? Did that come from Dexfield Park?
Yes. No, it came from the actual site. And there's a TV show on National Geographic. It's called The Diggers. There's 2 guys that they're crazier than hell. Just to be real honest with you. But anyway, they called us up, and I spent 2 days with them out at the site with their metal detectors, and the places where we started to look, where we thought the site was at, they didn't find anything, and then they jumped over the fence, and we didn't really have permission to be on that property. But Marvell Feller had told me that he thought that the actual site was on the Feller's property. Mm-hmm. So these guys jump over the fence, and they start finding shit. They start finding, and all these bullet casings and all this stuff is from. They had a guy that dated stuff, and then all this stuff's from the 30s. Yeah, it's all from the 30s. But the thing that really makes me think that they were onto something are those buttons. I mean, if you go out there, Gene, that field where they found that, I mean, it was timber and brush, and it had been cleared off and so on. But they found like 6 of those buttons in one spot. And Bonnie and Clyde, they were burning stuff. They were burning clothes.
They were burning clothes, right?
And so these buttons would fall.
Sure.
So I'm thinking they were on it.
That's probably where it was at then.
And a lot of, there's slugs. There's 45 slugs. There's 38 specials.
And that 45-70 round.
45-70.
Yeah.
A Model 86 Winchester.
Yeah. Yep.
They didn't have it, but there was somebody in the posse that did.
Yeah,
have that.
That's a good indicator.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good.
I mean, bullet fragments. I mean, there's it's pretty cool stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's pretty Yeah, that walking stick was after the people in Dexter found out that it was Bonnie and Clyde that were out there. The whole freaking town exited.
Yeah.
To go out and pick up
Yeah,
stuff.
they go pick up. Yeah.
Pick up.
Of course
bullet,
they did.
Bullet casings and
course-
whatever they could find.
Of course they did.
Digging bullets out of trees. I mean,
Yeah, that's like when Dillinger got shot. They were running up there, pulling her hankies out and putting it in his pool of blood to keep it as a souvenir.
And then they brought one of the cars in. Yeah, I don't know what that. Yeah, looks like it's
Some type of container.
I don't know. Somebody's. I don't even know where that came from. But it's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool.
But anyway, they brought one of the cars. They left. Of course, they left both cars out there because, you know, again, I don't know how much you know the story. When the shooting started, I mean, I wish I knew how many people were in the posse. I'm guessing between 50 and 75 people. Mm-hmm. And the guy in charge of the posse was a guy from Des Moines called. It wasn't the Dallas County Sheriff Clinton. It was a fellow by the name of Charles Riley was his name. They call him Rags Riley, and he kind of took charge of the posse, and he was the only one in the posse that was wounded that day.
Really?
One person wounded.
And he was the guy.
And he had gotten close enough, and according to his family, who came out, I talked to his family one day for like an hour out here, and they said he got close enough to the camp, him and probably 15 other people. There were others behind him, and he was in the fork of a tree, and he hollered at him, put down your guns, put up your hands. And this was like 5:45 in the morning, and the gang was out, and they had the car seats out of the car, and they were sitting around a campfire roasting hot dogs that they had bought the night before over here. And he hollered at them and said, put down your guns, put up your hands, you're surrounded. And they were on three sides. And he said that he saw throw the hot dogs in, and he saw them grab the rifles, the Brownings. And that's all he remembers because he got shot right behind the right ear and knocked him out of the fork of the tree and knocked him out. He was the only one that got wounded. But when he came to, he said it wasn't a guy that shot him, it was a woman that shot him. And it had to be Bonnie. It had to be Bonnie.
Yeah, Bonnie shot him.
That shot him. But all Clyde wanted at that point in time was to get in the car, get up the lane, and get away.
Get out,
He didn't want to. He didn't want to shoot out. He wasn't ready for that. But anyway, so he gets everybody in the car, and for some reason, the car was parked instead of like if the lane was going, it went like east and west lane, and this campground was here, east and west lane to get out. For some reason, they had pulled the car in like this. Not like this, but like this. So he had to back the car. He had to get the car maneuvered so he could go up. Well, when he was maneuvering the car, he ran over a stump, and the bumper got hung up. Him and WD got out, couldn't get it off. So they were going to go to the second car. But by that time, the posse had gotten up off their feet after the initial blast of the Brownies, and they were shooting like hell at them. Wow! And that's when Clyde got shot again, and Bonnie got shot, and WD, and Buck got the one. The only one that didn't get shot was Blanche that day. But anyway, they get to the second car, it's been shot to hell. They can't get it, so they take off. They're taking off to the woods, down the hill, and then back north towards the river. And the posse they stop, and I'm thinking, they're thinking that they shot them up good enough that they're going to find bodies. They're not going to make it very far. And that's where I was telling you on the phone, there's a group of teenagers that were out there. And the ringleader was a guy by the name of Kirtland Piper. And Kirtland was like 17 or 18 years old. And the shooting had stopped, and Kirtland and his buddies, Bob Krager was one of them, Virgil Musselman was one of them. There were several other, that they weren't in the posse, but they had come out because they heard that there was going to be something that was going down. And it's kind of funny because Kirtland said when him and his buddies the shooting started and he said bullets were just flying over them. They had to jump down in the ditch, and there was a tower that the government had built out there. I don't even know exactly where it was at, but this tower was like when airplane aviation was just starting to come into it. And this tower, they built these towers so pilots could kind of track.
So it was a radio tower.
It wasn't radio though.
It's
It was just like
just a visual
just a visual thing,
marker, yeah.
so they could see. But he said one of his buddies climbed up this tower so he could see. And he said the shooting started, and he said bullets were just flying everywhere. And he said the bullets were flying high because when Clyde and Bonnie were shooting their Brownings, the hill kind of went down like this, and the posse was coming down. People say that Clyde and Bonnie were not trying to kill people, which maybe they weren't. Maybe it was just, Clyde was just wanting to get in the car. But they said if they would have shot lower, they probably would have killed more people. And I don't know whether they were thinking about that or not. But anyway, the bullets were going up like this, but there was one of these kids that were in the tower. And Kirtland said, I never seen anybody get down off a 25-foot tower so goddamn fast, jump down so fast in my life. But anyway, so the shooting stopped.
They should have put that in a movie.
Yeah, the movie was bad. But anyway, Kirtland goes over there, and that's when the Dallas County Sheriff, Clint Nee, looks at him, looks and sees he's got his buddies with him. He says, "Yeah, you guys want to be part of the posse, huh?" Yeah, we do. And he says, "Well, we want you to follow they took off that way, and then we think they probably were going that way, and so we want you to see if you can find them where they're at." Yeah, he said, we think they're dead or wounded. And that's when Kirtland says, "Yeah, well, what happens if they're not? Well, they're still alive." So he grabs a rifle and gives them a rifle, one rifle for like 5 kids. But then this Keller guy jumps in and says, well, "I'll go with them with the Thompson." So they take off and they go up and they go down the hill where they think they might have gone, and there's this great big oak log at the bottom, and they're thinking that that'd be a good place to hide out. So the guy with the rifle was a fellow by the name of Virgil Musselman, and they told Virgil Musselman to go around to see if he could see anything behind the log. So he kind of stuck around and got in a position where he could see behind it, and he came back and says, "Yeah, I can see 2 pairs of feet on there." And then and it was Buck and Blanche. They did hide behind that log, and so according to Kirtland, they started shooting with the Thompson and with the rifle shooting at this oak log, and Buck was reaching over with he had a 45 and was shooting at him. And then according to Blanche, Buck let out a big and she thought he got killed, but he wasn't above where he's going to be able to get shot. That's when Blanche jumped up and says, "That's it, we're done, we give up." And so they caught them, and Kirtland was saying that, see, the park would have been, the park was like, I don't know, probably half a mile west of where they were at. And Kirtland said, we had to pick Buck. Buck couldn't walk very well. He said, we had to pick Buck up and basically carry him for that half mile. And he said, the hardest part was that there were 3 fences that they had to lift. They had to lift him over. Well, I've been out on that property. I've found 2 fences. 2 fences that probably were the two of them that he had to cross. The third one, I don't know. I've never found the third one out there. But anyway, happened to lift the body over that. But anyway, then they got up to where the park was, and of course that picture is a very famous picture.
Yes, I've seen that picture.
Buck's on the ground. This fellow with his back, that's Virgil Musselman, the guy who had the rifle. The guy holding Blanche there, that's Herschel Keller holding her at that point in time. And all she wanted to do was get over by him to see what they were doing to him, but they would never let her get close. But a guy by the name of Herb Schwartz took that picture, and I've talked to Herb Schwartz's family too. In fact, the son or grandson has the original negative.
Oh wow! To this picture. No kidding.
I mean, it became a very famous. There's the.
Oh yeah, that's from Des Moines. Des Moines paper.
The shootout happened that morning. That was the afternoon paper.
Wow.
They had 2 issues.
Wow.
We also used to get the Tribune too. But that picture became a national. And there's the car that they brought into Dexter. They actually displayed the car. There was a Pontiac dealership in Dexter, at that time. The Sulgroves, the guy in the picture is George Sulgrove. There's that big oak log. That's Herschel Keller, and that looks like James Young from Dexter.
Mm-hmm.
That's the log they found Buck and Blanche behind. There's Rags Riley I was telling you about. There's Rags Riley with his
with the dogs.
He brought his dogs, and the dogs' names are interesting because they're named Block and Tackle.
Oh yeah,
Block and Tackle.
Block and Tackle.
That guy up there posing with Blanche like a trophy is Lauren Forbes. He was with the Des Moines Police Department. And the other two pictures of Bonnie and Clyde. They treated Blanche like a goddamn trophy.
Oh yeah.
Which I suppose.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's like really,
Yeah.
I mean,
A moment of sensation. But it's like when they took Dillinger to the Lake County Jail in Lake County, Indiana, and they're like posing with him. You know, of course he made them look stupid in the end because he got away, he broke out of their jail.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, but anyway, that's the original news. But that's the original newspaper. So, but we have I don't know what happened to the camera. There's a camera there's other people on the board besides me, and I don't know why they took that camera out of here. But
Which camera is that?
oh, there was a deputy from Des Moines. There was a deputy from Des Moines. His name was Oscar Wiseman. And his family called. And I thought it was going to be a big thing. But it was to me a big thing, but it could have been bigger. But anyways, he took pictures that day. He was a deputy in that posse, and he took pictures that day out there at Dexfield Park. And when they called me, they were telling me that, and I'm thinking, shit, man, they might have some stuff that we've never seen before. And they got here and they had the camera, but they didn't have it. It was a glass negative type of. It was that old of a camera,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't have any pictures. But I kept the camera because basically it's one of those things that's like that gun.
Yeah.
It was there.
It was there.
It was there.
It was on the
and
scene.
It was on the scene. People don't get as excited like you and me when it's about that stuff, but to me, I get it.
Oh, I do.
I get it. I mean, I had when they showed me this camera, and I said, "This was out there," and he said,
right.
"Yeah, our granddad or whatever was a deputy, and he was taking pictures that day." Mm-hmm. But the thing of it was, they thought though that he took. They had that picture in the box of stuff, and I said, "Well, that's a cool picture." I said, "Why do you have that one in there?" Because he said, "Because he took it. Oscar took it." And I says, "He might have took one like it, but I said, a guy by the name of Herb Schwartz from the Des Moines Register and Tribune took that picture. He did. Well, we didn't know that. We thought that, because Oscar told us that he took that picture, and I didn't. I didn't argue.
Yeah.
And maybe he did take one like that.
Yeah.
But
This happens with photographs.
yeah.
I mean,
He might have taken. I mean, just because Schwartz took that, he might have taken one just like it.
and just like the Jesse James postmortem photo that they took, that, and we know that's him because they could trace it back because they knew where it was taken, but they made like 1,000 copies of that damn picture, and it went everywhere. Somebody says, if they say, well, I have an original picture of the postmortem, well, you might not have. You might have a copy of the original, but so yeah, that's that's a common thing in our hobbies.
But that's Buck on his deathbed up in. One interesting thing about that was they brought Buck and Blanche into Dexter, and when they found out, the people in Dexter found out that they were bringing people to the clinic. They didn't know who. They didn't know whether it was Bonnie and Clyde or who it was. But it was Buck and Blanche. And one of my friends.
She was a real looker, wasn't she?
Yes, she was. So was
pretty
Bonnie.
lady.
But anyway, her name. This lady who was 14, her name was Maxine Shell. And Maxine said there were probably half the town of Dexter was out at the side, and the other half was up here on Main Street waiting for them. But she said they brought these two in. She said, my friend and I were on the sidewalk. They brought them up. And she said that I could have reached out and touched him.
No kidding, yeah.
I could have reached out and touched him. And she said the thing that I remember the most, I mean, that Blanche was a pretty good looking lady, but she said when they walked by me, she said they stunk. They smelled. I wonder why they smelled for them, because they were out, you know, you can say they didn't take a bath, but they had access to water out there and so on. And they were going to farms and getting well water and that kind of thing. So I don't think it was because of that they hadn't bathed or anything like that. But anyway, she said that's the thing I remember the most about it. And so they take him up to Perry. And Dr. Osborne and Chapler have to operate on Buck. They couldn't operate on an injection. They take the one bullet out of his back, and they noticed that it nicked one of his lungs. And long story short, with Buck, he died 5 days later. But anyway, the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover was madder than hell. He was just madder, from what I've read and so on, about this shootout going down without the FBI being there. And it's like, man, we can't call you about everything,
right,
you know.
Right.
But anyway, so an FBI agent comes in to interview him, to find out whatever. I've got the interview at home, or the transcript of it. But basically, when this FBI agent walks in, he said, the smell in the room about knocked me down. And come to find out, that head wound, they'd been pouring peroxide in it, and it was nice and clean on the brain, but around the edges, where the skull got blown away, a lot of decayed skin
started decomposing.
And that's what
he was alive and dying at the same time. He was decomposing.
That's what my friend Maxine smelled, and that's what the FBI
agent was. Yeah.
What was what do they call it? When your skin decays away.
Yeah.
I can't remember the word for it. But
yeah, I can't either.
But anyway, they took him. They took him up there, and he died 5 days later. And the family came and got him and took him back and buried him in Dallas. And of course, not too long after that, 9 months later, 10 months later, they bury Clyde right by him. So,
yeah. Wow.
But yeah.
That's a hell of a story.
It's like I said, I've been all over the state. Kept telling this story about Bonnie and Clyde. It's like, really. I like telling the story about it. It's a big part of Dexter's history, which...
Oh, yeah.
But you have to understand, too, there are people in Dexter that... They used to have Bonnie and Clyde days in Dexter.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They did away with it because there were people in Dexter that didn't want to be associated with outlaws. So why do we want to be associated with somebody that killed 13 lawmen? Or 13 people and 9 lawmen?
Yeah.
Which, my reply is... they're not going to come to Dexter because it's a one-horse town. Right. That's why.
Yeah. It's an interesting point of history.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It is. And people around here don't understand that, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, people still want to, people buy books on outlaws. Actually, outlaws are actually a very big thing. It's a lot bigger than people realize. People usually don't even want to hear about lawmen. They want to hear about outlaws.
That's the Dexter I grew up in.
Yeah. It's like
in the 50s.
It's like in the movie about John Dillinger, or forget the actor's name, Warren, not Warren Beatty, the other guy. But anyhow, in the movie, the guy who played Melvin Purvis, and then where he's getting his shoes shined, and the kids are playing cops and robbers. And he says, I'm a G-man, don't you want to be a G-man when you grow up? He says, I don't want to be no damn G-man. I want to be John Dillinger. But that's true. That's how people look at things. So, I think it just needs more advertising. But I keep saying, though, you could almost call this area through here, the robbery site in Adair. This is like the outlaw trail besides the White Pole Road. This is Iowa's outlaw trail.
That's a good. That's a good idea. You could advertise it.
Yeah.
as such, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you get started in 8 years and outlaw and then into Dexter.
Yeah.
Well, then you have Stewart. Have you been over to Stewart, the bank?
No, well, I've been through Stewart quite a few times.
Have you been to the
They
bank?
got a great Mexican restaurant there.
I know, but
yeah,
have you been
no,
to
I have not been to the bank.
the bank that they robbed?
No, I haven't been there.
Oh, that was an interesting story too. Yeah. 9 months after they almost got killed, they were back in Stewart. And they robbed the bank
Wow.
in Baja. Yeah, that's.
He was determined, wasn't he? He was very.
People in Stewart didn't know who he was either.
Yeah, he was a very
But
determined man.
But he was driving. He wasn't driving a Ford that day. He was driving a. I don't know for sure where he stole. He had a 34 Pontiac. He was driving. Pretty new. But the interesting thing about that over in Stewart was the people in Stewart saw the car. I mean, they were there. They might have been staying out here.
Right.
They might have went back to Dexfield.
So in April 16th, he's in Stewart, robbing a bank in April 16th, and by May, we're talking a little bit over a month, right? He's down in Louisiana. They're all the way in Louisiana, and they got killed down there.
They robbed the bank.
And they robbed in Everly, Iowa.
We think that's the last one, although there's some reports about they robbed one in Lamoni before they left.
Oh, okay.
Left Iowa, but they don't know for sure. Bonnie and Clyde got blamed for a lot of things.
Right.
I mean, for a lot of things because it was them.
Again, it's like Jesse James.
Yes.
There was the same phenomenon that happened to every robbery. Anybody that got robbed anywhere wanted to claim it was Jesse James, so they don't know how many banks or how many trains he really robbed because there was probably copycat stuff going on. But the range, like where he's at, he's down in Missouri, he's down in Platte City, he's out in Nebraska, he's down in Texas. Look at they're out in Oklahoma, right? This is Jesse James. This is the same type of patterns as Jesse James.
Well,
just wandering all over the place.
I think we talked about it on the phone that Jesse James was Clyde Burrell's hero.
Yeah, it was his hero. Yeah.
But Buddy Burrell told me that. He said
that makes sense.
If you really want to follow, just see what Jesse James did because Clyde pretty much followed the same.
Yeah, he followed the same thing, right?
The same path.
And that makes total sense.
It does.
It makes total sense.
It does.
Because you could see it.
Yeah.
You could see it. There's well, I probably told you about it. There's an interesting story where Jesse James and Frank are down somewhere almost on the Mexican border, and there's a cattle buyer, and he's down there, but he was from out in Liberty, Missouri. He knew who they were, and they knew who he was, but they met on the trail, and he was like, he got scared when he saw him, so he didn't use his real name, and they didn't use their real name, and they just exchanged pleasantries. They said hi, and everybody moved on, and years later he ran into this cattle buyer guy ran into Frank in Lexington, sitting on the steps of the courthouse, and he walks up to him, and Frank saw him. He's like, "You son of a bitch! I knew that was you on the trail in Texas." You know, and they were everywhere. They were all over the place. But their movement was a hell of a lot easier because they had a car. You know, 70 miles an hour, they could be in Texas in 12 hours.
They made, yeah. I mean, they robbed these banks and they didn't end up back down in Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah, he liked Iowa.
No, well,
yeah.
You could see.
He liked Iowa.
He made a living.
He made a living in
Iowa. He made a
Iowa.
living because nobody.
Yeah.
Like I say, when I asked my program people, I said, why they like to come to Iowa? Oh, they're Iowa nice people. I don't think so. That's just because nobody in Iowa knew who they were.
They didn't know who they were.
I mean,
it was easy for them.
5 days they spent out here coming into town.
Yeah.
Nobody
questions asked.
Nobody stopped them.
Nobody thought a thing about it.
And it's hard to. I mean, if it hadn't been for Henry and I and his blackberry hunting,
it never would have happened.
And I mean, they might have been out there. I think they were out there many more times than just.
Oh yeah.
Than just this. Because
it sounds like they knew the place. Or at least he knew the place.
Yeah.
Because even today, by modern standards, like that park is kind of out of the way.
Yeah.
You know, and if you weren't passing through there looking directly at it, you'd never know it was there.
But I still think there must have been some kind of sign on the. Like we got, it says historical sites.
Yeah.
I'm just betting that the Dexfield amusement park, there was a sign that with arrows,
had to be.
with arrows pointing that way, because people had to know.
Yeah, they had to know.
They had to know how to get there. So, yeah, interesting story.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is 1,000 times better than I thought it'd be. It's just 1,000 times better than I thought it'd be. This is awesome.
You didn't think it was going to be worth anything?
Oh no, I didn't know what to expect. I had, I didn't know. Usually, like the local historical societies have like a spread of stuff. And I was talking about Maxwell. You go up to Maxwell, and they have a museum that's in 2 separate storefronts, and they got I was telling some reenactor buddy, because I'm a reenactor too, and I was telling some of my buddies, I'm like, you got to go to this place, because it's like you have no idea what they have there. But if you weren't passing through there, you didn't have a reason to be there. You probably would just drive right by, and you'd have no idea. But then usually those places have a lot of stuff, But this is very, very focused on this incident. Like this museum is focused on that incident.
Well, I like to talk about Truman too. So.
Well, yeah, because he was out here too.
Yeah. See, I taught school for history for 35 years, and having 2 outlaws visit your town or having a president visit your town.
Right.
Which is more important?
Yeah, having the outlaws.
To most people, it is. But Truman shows up and 100,000 people show up.
Right.
100,000 people.
100,000 people, to watch, because they did that tractor thing.
The national plowing match.
Yeah,
those scoreboards are the originals too.
Wow.
A guy found those in a corn crib roof, and he was tearing down.
Wow. No
south
kidding.
of Dexter.
No kidding.
And instead of just piling up and burning them, he piled. And then Clyde showed up and asked Buck why he's embarrassing himself doing this work when we can go rob one bank and have twice that much money or 3 times that much money. So why are you doing this? And Buck said, why am I doing this?
And it sounds like who? Sounds like Frank and Jesse. And Frank trying to go straight, and Jesse's like, no, we got another bank we got to rob. No, I'm going up to Iowa. What are you doing?
Yeah. But they were lucky out there at the park. They were luckier than hell.
Oh yeah.
They were lucky.
Yeah, they were way lucky.
They
should have been killed out there.
That was one of the 9 lies.
Yeah.
One of their 9 lies.
Oh, absolutely.
Clyde
all them armed people shooting at him. It should have been the end of them.
Yeah, I don't know. If he would have not got hung up on that stump, he might have gotten out of there and to the road and away.
Yeah.
But there were people along that lane.